represent now, where they're starting to feel the heat, we almost flipped some of those guys. In fact, Massey from Kentucky did vote with us. So we picked that one up. We just need to pick up 4 altogether, the next time we have a vote like this. But putting pressure on them in their districts, and that's like, California, some of the districts in the suburban New York, Kiggins, the one in Norfolk down next to Bobby Scott. I mean, districts like that we can pick up, and we have to also make sure we're explaining to the voters in those districts exactly what it is they voted for. Because when that local hospital closes, it's not because something, random happens.
Right.
It's a result of the bill that cut the Medicaid funding, and you happen to be near a hospital that relies heavily on that revenue stream.
One of the things that, and let me know that this actually happened, because one of the things that I thought that should have happened, and maybe it did, and I missed it. I said to Ken Martin, I said to Leader Jeffries, hey, you guys should have a David Letterman-like top 10 list of the most onerous, dangerous things in this bill. There was so much focus on Medicaid and SNAP, which I totally understand. It was almost a 10,000-page bill. And I guess how my brain works, I would have stuck 20 staffers in a room and said, you got 50 pages each, right, and to go through. So you take, for instance, what was actually in the bill that allowed you to deduct gambling losses. And then you had Republicans on the Senate Finance Committee, Grassley, they were like, and another one's like, we don't know how that got in the bill.
Right, yeah.
But it got in the bill. To me, that's one of those things that, it's not Medicaid, it's not SNAP, but it's one of those things where if you're showing, the whole deal with deducting, private planes. To me, it's those things that when they are being told, people go, wait a minute, what the hell is going on? Right. And it changes the dialogue around a bill.
I think that's right. I mean, the challenge, and we do a lot of work on that. The problem is trying to get it out in a way that it gets picked up from a media standpoint. But I think that's right. And so there's a lot of pieces where, whether it's the rule of law kind of thing, where people's rights are being violated, how can we get those things out? Impacts on like local schools, cuts to Pell Grants, for example, impacting things like that. We want to make sure we're trying to get out so people understand it. But if you look at what we did with Medicaid and SNAP, at the time this vote was taken, like half of the voters didn't even know this bill was pending. So we had a lot of good breakthrough. The bill was underwater by 21 points, according to the Fox poll. But still, we had work to do then. We've still got more work to do now. We've got a little bit of time now to spool it out a little more carefully and thoroughly and give people a chance to hear about it. And there's over 200 members in the House Democratic Caucus. So we don't all have to be saying the same thing at the same time every place. We can use some of these other outlets to talk about the particulars and the impact that they're having along the lines that you're suggesting.
Well, and I think that, that the energy you guys had before the vote should continue afterwards. Yeah. Continuing doing these town halls in these districts, continuing putting the pressure there where it's constant. I was on a chat earlier with some folks, and we were talking about, well, what do you do? We were talking about, what can you do? And there was a frustration. And I said, guys, listen, we have to be thinking and operating with more than a year out from the midterm elections. And I say this on this show all the time: inform, enlighten, educate. Inform, enlighten, educate. Inform, enlighten, educate. That we have to connect the dots for the people. And I think that that's what members of Congress have to do. Literally walk people through, and where it's literally a civics 101 lesson every single day. Yeah. This is what you're gonna lose. This is what's gonna get cut. This is what's gonna happen. And then they begin to see that they're not buying this, oh, it's a big, beautiful bill. It's going to be great and wonderful. It's going to unleash a golden age. It's like, no, you're about to get screwed.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'll give you an example. The tax break on tips, supposedly.
That's not in the bill.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a total scam. So, but they keep talking about it, and they, keep acting like people are going to get some kind of benefit from it, but they really aren't. And so, making sure we push those points. AOC was pushing that because she was a waitress and had a chance to live that life, and she can speak from experience on that. But getting that out is going to be important because there's a lot of folks, middle class, working class folks, who are hearing the promises they're making and not realizing how fake it is. Or, well, the stuff they're trying to give you, that's just temporary anyway. The big stuff that goes to the big dollar guys,
right,
that's permanent. And so why are they giving you temporary but giving them permanent? You know why that is. And they're giving you temporary just long enough to get you past the midterm vote coming up. And then when it drops off the table, they're going to hope you forget. And we got to make sure we're doing it every day, like you're saying, to keep people's focus on it and to keep connecting the dots so they don't forget about it.
Questions from the panel. Joe, you first.
Congressman, hello, and glad that you are in the fight there. Roland kind of stole my question about town hall, but let me ask this. Tell me about if there's ways for you to potentially be a help to your constituents with constituent services, with one of them being, and often my friend is Pete Aguilar from California. And, when he first came into Congress, they weren't in charge. And so one of the things you'd always say is you can be really good at constituent services.
Right.
Is there a way for congressmen's offices, for your offices, to possibly be well on constituent services, particularly in terms of coordinating alternative sources of potential benefits? Maybe connecting with state government, connecting with state resources, and maybe even sometimes people don't know. There's a lot that's gone, but maybe there's some things that are still there that people don't know about. Has there been some talk about coordinating with state and county to really identify resources and have it amped up just because of the necessity that so much of this being missing is really going to create?
Yeah, that's a great point. And yes, I think is the answer to that. Now, here's the challenge. So in Maryland, we did a town hall meeting. And one of the things we talked about was, well, guess what? Governor Moore is rolling out efforts to hire out displaced federal workers because we love to have them in the state government. They do great work. They're very talented, et cetera. Now, and we've had some success with that, but here's the challenge. There's a lot of states, and Maryland's one of those, and localities, and Prince George's County is one of those, where we've got, financial challenges from a budgetary standpoint as well. So it's not always easy to turn to them so they can pick up the slack. But we're trying to work in coordination and make sure we're doing as much of that as possible to get the message out. But it's also important to get the message out at their level, too. So I'll give you an example. One of the things Hakeem did in his 9-hour speech was he pulled out a resolution from the Louisiana State Legislature where they had passed the resolution asking their federal delegation not to support this bill because of the impact on Medicaid in Louisiana that would be falling out from it. Now, people didn't know that, but it's heavily Republican, state legislature. And guess what? The speaker and the majority leader are both out of Louisiana. So having, state, local people make these points at their level, I think is important too, to help support the message that's coming out of Congress, help support the message that's coming out of Washington, but also to give more trusted voices to people in their localities. Because a lot of these red states and red jurisdictions, when the hospital shuts down or when they lose their OBGYN unit or whatever, they're going to want to say, well, that must be some Democratic thing. It's going to be important for their state people to say, it was what happened, what I told you about before, and guess what? We can't pick up the slack because we can't raise taxes enough to cover the hole that was left by the federal cuts that were made. So I think you're right on the money, and we need to find new ways and additional ways to get any kind of support we can from state and local and private, by the way, and also to make sure they're getting the message out too.
Rebecca?
Congressman, I'm one of your constituents. It's great to talk to you tonight. So you went to El Salvador and you received a lot of criticism for that trip. Can you talk about why it was important for you to show up on behalf of Mr. Garcia?
Well, a couple reasons. Due process is something that not just Mr. Garcia needs, but like African Americans need it too, and everybody across the board does. And so if you look at what's come in the wake of when Trump met with Bukele, the president of El Salvador, one of the things they were joking about was building 5 more prisons down there so they could send, quote, homegrown people down to those prisons in El Salvador. Well, I think I know who that might be. and I want to make sure we're not in harm's way. And that connects up with the efforts to denaturalize citizens. I didn't even know that was a possible concept, much less a possible action.
And they damn sure want to do it.
They damn sure want to do it and eliminate birthright citizenship. And the Supreme Court, I thought was going to rule on that, but they just focused on the universal injunctions piece and left that standing, even though it couldn't be more straightforward in the plain language in the Constitution. So I think it's important for us to make sure that everybody gets due process, whatever this is he's trying to roll through, and however far he wants to go, we need to nip it in the bud now, because if we're not careful, African Americans could get rolled up into this too. And by the way, they're deporting people. Like Kilmar got a lot of the focus, but there's like 50 Venezuelans who were deported out of the United States and sent to that same jail, the CICOT prison in El Salvador, who were here legally. Their paperwork was in order. They hadn't committed any crimes in the United States or even civil violations. No crimes in El Salvador, no crimes in Venezuela. The Cato Institute identified this. So it's not some kind of Democratic talking point. But they've been sent to El Salvador indefinitely. They're in jail down there indefinitely. That's the kind of stuff we have to fight against and make sure we don't let it stand.
On that particular point, you go in there in the due process issue. Let's just be frank. You've got a lot of anti-immigrant feelings among some black folks, including black immigrants. And there were people who were highly critical of your actions and of Democrats. But the point that I kept, and then of course you get the Republicans who were saying, oh, they're playing right into our hands. But what I kept trying to explain to people is, do understand, if we are silent on due process for undocumented workers, you heard Trump say he wanted to send American inmates to El Salvador prisons.
Right.
So we need to understand they will apply that to us.
Yep.
So you can't be silent because it's undocumented. You're going to say, absolutely not. The rule of law is the rule of law.
That's right. And the other part, too, was, if you remember, the court struggle with this, because you had courts, including the Supreme Court, say
bring him back.
Bring him back.
And they were like, hell no.
And the courts have been our only, you hate to have to rely on these guys because, it's a Trump Supreme Court, but they gave us some rulings and continue to do some, right? So if we're not going to stand up with those guys
right
when they're ruling for us, I don't think they're going to keep ruling for us, especially if you remember the Republicans, as soon as Boasberg, the judge here in D.C., and Zennis, the one in Greenbelt, came out and said, you got to bring these guys back and give them their due process day. There were 7 members of the House, Republicans, of course, who went after them on impeachment grounds, put together resolutions of impeachment. We've got to let those judges know that we're not just going to let it go by just because they're not black or white or whatever. We're going to fight it because it's due process, it's rule of law. We got to make sure that everybody gets it, because if they're not getting it, there's a good chance that we ain't going to get it either.
Absolutely. Congressman Ivey, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks a bunch, folks.
Right.
We go to a break. We come back. I keep telling y'all Donald Trump is an idiot. This man thoroughly embarrassed the United States and showed his level of stupidity in talking to 5 African leaders. Wait till we show you what happened. And I have an education, a book reading list for all these MAGA idiots who know nothing about Liberia and the relationship with the United States. Folks, you're watching Roland Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. The goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. That goes to my show. It goes to the other 4 shows. Look, we don't have millionaires and billionaires cutting us checks. We don't have these major advertisers because these ad agencies are screwing black-owned media. Publicis, Group M, Horizon. I can keep naming all of you. Omnicom, all of these folks. And so We need your support. And so if you want to contribute via Cash App, here's a QR code right here, the Stripe QR code. Remember, Cash App changed their rules, so they closed all of our accounts. So to contribute via Cash App, you got to use the Stripe QR code to do so. You can use the Stripe QR code, also credit cards, checks and money orders. Make them out to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Send them to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. PayPal, R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo, RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Folks, we'll be right back.
This week on the other side of change.
Mass incarceration, Trump administration is doubling down on criminalization and how it is profitable.
And there's something really, really perverse about saying that we need to put people in cages in order for other people to have jobs. Like, that is not how our economy should be built.
Only on the other side of change on the Black Star Network. This week on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie, we're talking faith, family, fatherhood, and the pathway to reentry. Most of us, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, have had someone in our lives, whether it was a grandfather, a father, an uncle, a brother, or a cousin, who has been incarcerated or justice impacted. What does that look like in rebuilding family and relationships? What does it look like for us to be able to have substantive conversations, come to the table, love on each other, while at the same time get it all out in the open so that we can begin a new journey together?
You know, the last thing you want is, in the midst of trying to piece your life back together, for home to not be a comfortable place.
That's all next on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie here on Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, less than 5% of the top executive positions in corporate America are held by women of color. We know it's not because of talent. A recent study says that it's microaggressions, unconscious bias, and limited opportunities being offered to women of color. On our next show, we're going to get incredible advice from Francine Parham, who's recently written a book sharing exactly what you need to do to make it up into the management ranks and get the earnings that you deserve.
I made a point to sit down and I made a point to talk to people. And I made a point to be very purposeful and thought-provoking when I spoke to them.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Next on The Black Table with me, Greg Carr, the enigma of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. What really makes him tick, and what forces shaped his view of the world, the country, and Black America? The answer, I'm pretty sure, will shock you.
And he says, people think that I'm anachronistic. I am. I want to go backwards in time in order to move us forward into the future. He's very upfront about this.
We'll talk to Corey Robin, the man who wrote the book that reveals it all. That's next on The Black Table, only on the Black Star Network.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
It really is difficult to say that the occupant of the Oval Office is truly one of the stupidest people you have ever seen. But without a doubt, Donald Trump is an idiot. When you see these right-wingers trying to label anybody black or Latino or female as being a DEI hire when something goes wrong, and then you look at the sheer incompetence of this white man, you go, really? Really? Y'all want to call somebody a DEI hire? Today, 5 African leaders came to the White House for bilateral meetings. And I felt sorry for them because here they are sitting there having to kowtow, beg, coddle, praise this egotistical maniac because he so desperately needs attention. At one point, one of the leaders from Senegal was talking, and Trump literally was like, I need you to hurry up. Do y'all have the video? Play that video.
We have a great deal of resources, many, many resources, and we have a lot of opportunities to offer in terms of investment. We have minerals, rare earths, rare minerals. We have manganese. We have uranium. And we have a good inclination that we have lithium and other minerals. We're the second largest producer for the last 60 years in Africa of iron ore. We produce a lot. And we have a lot of resources in our seawaters, so lots of fishing and whatnot. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
But I appreciate it very much. I appreciate it. Maybe we're going to have to go a little bit quicker than this because we have a whole schedule. If I could just say, your name and your country would be great. Thank you, please.
It was 5 countries. It was 5. Oh my God, we're going way too slow. It was sheer idiot. It was just idiot. But this moment right here shows you how absolutely dumb this man is. Listen to this.
We want to encourage American involvement in the investment in Liberia. Yeah. We'd like to see that happen. We want to work with the United States in peace and security within the region because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, and such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well,
Very
and
good, sir.
they come from.
Run that back.
We want to encourage American involvement in the investment in Liberia. Yeah. We'd like to see that happen. We want to work with the United States in peace and security within the region because we are committed to that. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, and such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well,
Very
and
good, sir.
they come from.
Joseph Boakai is the president of Liberia. Also happens to be fraternity brother of mine, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Trump is so stupid that he literally has no clue. He don't know where Liberia is. He don't know how many people are there. He doesn't know anything about is history. If they had showed this dumbass the Liberian flag, this idiot probably would have went, oh my goodness, that's the Liberian flag? That looks like the Texas flag. Oh my God, that looks like the United States flag. I'm curious, Mr. President. Why did your people pick a flag that looks like ours? Maybe because the country was colonized by formerly enslaved people of African descent who actually were sent to Liberia by the American Colonization Society. In fact, y'all, it was a merging of two forces. You had the American Colonization Society, you had these abolitionists and these racist plantation owners who actually came together and said, hey, let's ship these folks out. A lot of them came from Virginia. And they traveled from the United States to Liberia. And what's crazy, we talk about colonization, these formerly enslaved people of African descent brought that, frankly, white plantation mentality to Liberia. And they basically colonized the indigenous people in Liberia. And up until they had the Civil War in Liberia, these descendants of formerly enslaved people ran the country. Yep, they ran the country. Then you had the Civil War. And what you've had is you still have these battles going on between those folks who are indigenous and those who came from the United States. See, Donald Trump is so dumb, he's never read. He knows nothing. So just like years ago when I had to give Bill O'Reilly an education about patriotism and black Americans when he criticized Colin Kaepernick, how about this, Donald? A book by Stephen Ellis. It's called The Mask of Anarchy, The Destruction of Liberia and the Religious Dimension of an African Civil War. How about you and MAGA read that? How about this? Madam President, The Extraordinary Journey of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf by New York Times writer Helene Cooper, who's also from Liberia. The first woman to be president of an African nation. Yep. How about that, you idiot? Oh, here's another one. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, This Child Will Be Great. Memoir of a Remarkable Life by Africa's First Woman President. It's her book. This is her memoir. You might learn about Liberia reading that book. How about this, Donald Trump? The Price of Liberty, African Americans and the Making of Liberia by Claude A. Clegg III. How about that? Let's see here. What do I have? Another America, the story of Liberia and the former slaves who ruled it. James Cement. See this right here? That's them, you idiot. How about this here? An African Republic, Black and White Virginians in the Making of Liberia. Marie Tyler McGraw. How about you read that, dumbass? Let's see here. Oh, Donald Trump, ever heard of Goodyear? Guess what? Goodyear was built by the rubber from Liberia. Here's a book called Empire Rubber, Firestone Scramble for Land and Power in Liberia by Greg Mittman. How about you read that book? Let's see. How about this? Liberia, America's African Stepchild. This book, way too many pages for Donald Trump, by David Jean Reese. That's this right here. Now, some of y'all may be saying, dang, Roland, that's a lot of books on Liberia. Man, why do you have all those books on Liberia? I don't know. It could be because in 2022, when they had their bicentennial celebration of those folks traveling from the United States to Liberia, they actually had a celebration. We were there covering that whole deal. We spent 10 days there. We did numerous specials on it. Y'all can go to the Black Sun Network app. You can go to our YouTube channel and see the coverage we did. So I'm going to give you about 15 minutes or so of some of the coverage, and you can actually hear us talk about the history of Liberia. But these idiots know nothing about it except, oh my God, you speak English so well. It shows you how dumb and clueless these people are. He wouldn't even read a briefing paper his staff provided for him because Donald Trump is an absolute dumbass. Press play.
In Monrovia, Liberia, and where we're standing right now is this massive monument to the first president of Liberia. It's Joseph Jenkins Roberts. You see this statue, you see this just amazing display here. And it shows you two things. It shows you the history, if you will. It shows paying homage to the past, but it also gives you a glimpse of what this place used to be. So we're standing right here and above this space here. And if you look out around here, you'll see at this high point overlooking all of Monrovia. You see this amazing edifice. You got the ocean that's to the right over here. Again, gorgeous views. Then, of course, when you look over here is what was called the Ducor Hotel. And so what is essentially now ruins sits there right there as well. This is all greatly impacted. That hotel was destroyed by the Civil War that was in 1989. Remember, there was a coup in 1980, Civil War 1989, lasted 15 years. And so I've talked about this a lot, what this country used to be. In many ways, Liberia was the model for African nations. It was the first republic on the continent as well. Ghana, so when people talk about Ghana becoming the first African nation gaining its independence in 1957, that's not necessarily true in terms of that was colonized by non-whites. So Liberia was long before that its own republic, served as the model, if you will. If you think about where the country was in terms of its infrastructure, in terms of its roads, in terms of education, all of that was in many ways not destroyed, but was significantly hindered by the 15 years of Civil War. That's an entire generation. And so now what you have is an effort to restore. Any other place, if you talk about the United States, any other place, any other place, this area right now, where will it be? Will be the focus of massive development. Because literally, because a statue like this here, because of the location of a hotel like this here. And so, in fact, what's interesting about that sign is the Ducor Hotel, it says, the future starts now. But you see the old sign as well. And so there's so much to think about in terms of the effort to restore this country, to rebuild this country, and to actually make it a crown jewel again. And so it really is amazing to be up here, to see these cannon displays, these cannons that are here as well. And I could only imagine what this place, what this spot here looked like 30 years ago. What it looked like before the Civil War. It had to be absolutely magnificent because of the hotel and also this building that's right here as well. And again, as you can see, overlooking all of the city from this high vantage point as well. We didn't want our trip to Liberia to be all about politics. I also wanted to learn about the history of this country, from the founders to even the National Museum, to get a better understanding. of this country founded by freed people of African descent 201 years ago.
That's them.
All right, let's go to the museum.
And the Wave of Time takes you through Liberia's history, which is on the second floor. The entire bottom floor represents all of the different politics, our culture, our music, our dance, a lot of masks. Liberia, you have all of the different tribes are represented with masks. And these masks all have different representations.
So that's why all this over here
pretty much are your basic, indigenous culture. This all represents our indigenous culture. So for example, you have here, for example, most of our huts, we use a lot of natural materials. So this represents some of that, to showcase, that we do use our natural materials. This is what is it called, papa, but it's a form of thatch. This thing is like zinc on top of your house. And then you have like the, slippers, pretty much what people wore back in the day before we started wearing what we have now. This is a game called Makala that people also, of course, like a board game. So like this morning at Julie Envy's, you say that's a peace ceremony where you were named, you saw the masquerade dancer. All right, so these masks represent some of that. And so what you saw this morning is a representation of one of our cultures. And so this is from the Don tribe, but all of these tribes are pretty much represented by masks. And these masks, the ones that they have at the museum, are all antiques. I mean, very, very old masks. Wow. Yes. So I'll take yours.
A drum? This is a drum?
That's a drum. Yes.
What if they stand on and play it?
That's called the tukpa drum.
A talking drum.
Yes.
Wow. That's a big drum.
Right. Liberia has a lot of heritage, a lot of history. You saw the country cloth. So that's what you were given this afternoon. Primarily comes from Lofa. And so that's Liberia's hand-woven fabric. Very, very traditional. Woven normally by the people of Lofa County. And this is the wheel that they use to weave the fabric. And this is exactly what they use today. It's still pretty much the same.
So it's it was similar to what I actually got it when I was in Ghana.
Okay.
What they did the kente cloth.
Okay.
And actually did that. So yeah, that was interesting.
Yes. So that's pretty much okay. So we'll go
that requires a technique.
Yes, but I want to show you something before we leave. This is also one of the masquerades. This is one of the tribes.
What, somebody wore that thing?
Yes, it's a mask.
Man. You're gonna have a strong neck for that one.
I'm not sure if they wore that one. I'll tell you that I did a representation of one.
All right, what's this?
So Providence Island in 1822 is where the first free blacks that came onto Liberia's coast, this is where they landed. All right, so around Providence Island is what's called the Mississippi River. So when you read the history, the settlers initially went onto Chevron, then they came onto Providence. So this is what that is. So this actually was done, I understand this was taken in 1819, when Firestone came in. But this is basically what the island looked like when the settlers arrived.
Wow, okay. All right, we head upstairs.
So these are just showing you depictions of some of what's in our rainforest. Liberia is home to 40% of the upper rainforest. So we are still a very green country. And at this time, so now we're heading up to the second floor where you have the history and heritage exhibition. So we'll start here. This is Chief Swakoko, and she was one of the greatest warriors of Liberia and one of the toughest chiefs of Liberia. She formed part of the early Firestone.
So what is this film? What is this film from? What is this film?
This is from the ceremony for Firestone. So if you were to watch this, It really goes into Firestone coming into Liberia, but it has other things going on in there as well.
That's some old film there.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Then we'll come on this side. We go into the colonization story. We've heard of Paul Gaffe. He came in as the first African American to try to repatriate African free blacks onto the continent. And he died, before the American colonization was formed. So Paul Gaffe sort of is the one who started that whole concept. The American colonization took it from that point. You also heard about Liberia this morning. He was instrumental in getting people to sign up to come on that ship. When they got to Liberia, he, at Providence Baptist Church, was the founder of the church and has been very instrumental.
And this is your ancestor?
That's my ancestor. That's my great grandfather, Elijah Johnson. And he also was a part of that first group that arrived and became the first black governor.
So, first of all, Paul Gaffe, Elijah Johnson, Lot Carey.
Yes. So Paul Gaffe is the first African American that tried to encourage African Americans to come back to the continent. He came, I believe, on one expedition, and then he died shortly after. So when the American Colonization Society was formed, it really stemmed from Paul Gaffe's principle. So he was really the first African American to really push that concept.
So they first came here in 1822.
1822.
This is, he was moving, he took 38 to Freetown, Sierra Leone in 1816.
Yes.
Wow.
So he was really ahead of his time.
So folks talk about those enslaved people of African descent first coming here. They actually went to Sierra Leone first.
Yes. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the initial ship that came into Africa settled on Chevron Island in Sierra Leone. And the conditions, they were really, really harsh. And so some people died, and those that survived were then transferred up Cape Mesurado, further up north, onto Providence Island. And others joined them onto Providence Island. And that migration continued, I believe, until 1862, 1864, somewhere in there.
Now, when we went to church, that's who the pastor was?
That was the first pastor of the Providence Baptist Church. So you can say he was the founder of the Providence Baptist Church. He was a Baptist minister and a musician. Very intelligent man. There's a school today called Liberia. We have a street named in his honor.
Tesla is finished. Elon has failed. That is what they want you to believe. But tech experts.
This is your ancestor.
That's my ancestor, direct ancestor, on my mother's side. So Elijah Johnson also was on that initial ship that came to Liberia. And most Liberians know him as the man that said, here we are and here we shall remain. When the settlers began grumbling about the hardships. So he became the first black governor after the reassessment of the settlement.
So Declaration was signed in 1847, so he passed just a couple of years after.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
I think he became the governor in 1827, 28, somewhere.
Wow, and his son became president?
His son became president, Hillary Richard Wright Johnson.
Wow, okay. So your family has a little history here in Liberia.
We have a little bit of history. But these are just some of the, showing slavery, letting people understand,
And these here are actual photos that were shot here in Liberia.
Yes, arrival of free blacks onto the continent, meeting.
Wow.
Yes, but these are very.
Yeah, you can see you see how they were dressed.
Yes, very different and meshing with the culture. This depicts some of African Americans back in the day. These are the first presidents up to Tolbert. He was the first, I think, dark-skinned African American because most of them were very, very fair complected. And so he became, Edward J. Roy became the first dark-skinned president. And like I said, True Whig Party, you saw the True Whig Party building. So they were all True Whig Party members. Then, of course, Joseph Jenkins Roberts. You have, that his story. This is a table This table was given to Joseph Jenkins Roberts by the Queen of England. This is the original table to the first president of Africa, the first Black African free republic. So here you have Liberia going through war. Many people have heard of President Sirleaf winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Lema Bowie also joined President Sirleaf, and she was also a Nobel Prize winner. She was one of those who did sit-ins when President Taylor was president and demanded peace for Liberia. So they led the cause for Liberia's freedom and peace in, I believe it was 20.
So how many women were, so was it awarded to her or the group of women?
It was awarded to her because she led the group. She was the leader.
The women of Liberia Mass Act, so was it more than 1,000 women? Wow.
Oh yes, the women came out. As you can see, there are some images of just basically saying peace. And from my understanding, they went to Ghana, I believe, for peace talks. And the men were in the room talking, and the women came and they, I think, held hands and said that the men would not leave. They pretty much held them hostage and said, you will not leave that room until you bring Liberia to peace. And so that's what happened. And Lema Bowie led that cause. She along with many other women.
She doesn't get talked a lot about.
Yes, but she's here. I mean, she's here. She's working, and she's doing her thing.
Would love to talk to her.
She's here. Oh, these are atrocities of war on this side. Very graphic images of the war. Once again, a reminder of how much Liberia lost during this war.
Severed heads, bodies. How many? What's the estimated number of people who died during this war?
When I'm talking to the panel, you're gonna.
Right. It was a very atrocious war.
It was 15 years?
It went from 1990 up until 2003 is when we finally decided no more. So that's President Tubman. He and President Tolbert. So Tubman and Tolbert. But Tubman is known for the longest, he was the longest running president in Liberia.
See, that's not all of it there, Rebecca, but I wanted people to understand that Liberia and America are completely linked. Later, we went to Providence Island, where those first folks arrived. There is no Liberia without the United States of America. That shows you the sheer ignorance of this man who has no idea about how these two countries are linked. Donald Trump it is a constant embarrassment to America.
Absolutely. Before I get into the orange man's ignorance, what I thought was really interesting, and I really appreciate you telling the story of what happened when the former enslaved Blacks from America showed back up to that area, to the continent, and the level of discord and the destruction towards the indigenous folks. Thank you for talking about that, because even as we think about some of the return to Africa movements now, or folks who want to leave the United States or even purchase second homes, possibly in Ghana, is understanding that in the United States, it is based upon white supremacy. All of us have ingested that. So when we go to other parts of the world, especially when we're going back to the continent, we have to be conscious enough to do the work to practice anti-racism with ourselves and anti-white supremacy with ourselves. So we're not taking that toxicity from America to the continent, because that's not helpful either. And that's even leads to some of the diaspora wars that we see now between Black Americans and those on the continent. But what I really enjoyed hearing was the history of former President Johnson Sirleaf, who is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and being the first woman president on the continent. I appreciate that was highlighted. But going to the ignorance of Donald Trump, The thing about the white supremacy ideology is so flawed and it's inferior. It's not based upon logic. It's not based upon actual factual information. And it's a morally defunct and bankrupt ideology. But of course, Donald Trump thought that he was in the right, and he thought that he thinks that he is superior to those leaders who showed up to the White House with honor and with the dignity. It's unfortunate that those leaders and other leaders from sub-Saharan Africa is showing up to the White House. I get why they have to. I understand the current world stage, but he's not fooling anyone. The entire world is watching, and they understand how ignorant and morally depraved the current leader of the United States is.
You know, Joe, the folks were called Americo-Liberians, and they ran that country until Samuel Doe became president. And the thing here, you had two civil wars there, and Charles Taylor, rebel leader, took over. And then, of course, they finally had peace. And then, of course, we saw what happened with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf becoming president. And what's so sad is that because of Doge's cuts to USAID, that has negatively impacted countries like Liberia. 250,000 people died in their civil war. It's an extremely young country. There are some, if you guys advance it, we actually, when I was there, we visited Providence Island. We had drone shots and everything that was the place where those first people of African descent, the founders of, frankly, Liberia, first arrived on that land. And the country, guys, kill the audio, please. Loud. You don't have, unfortunately, you don't have significant manufacturing there. The rubber plants, unfortunately, what happened there was the Goodyears of the world, Firestone, they basically stripped the rubber and then sent it out to America to be actually produced. So unfortunately, you have a young country that doesn't have economic opportunity because they lack manufacturing in the country. And so we see the same thing in Ghana. Liberia was the first country to declare, and the first African nation to declare independence. And so here's a country that has been tied to America since 1822, but it's literally still economically poor because it's rich minerals, and it's being raped. And unfortunately, when that video we showed, here you have these African leaders coming there. We've got minerals, we've got this. Look what happened with what Trump did to Ukraine, demanding $500 billion worth of minerals. So the United States doesn't want other countries to thrive economically. Frankly, we want to rape them of their riches and not really have them grow and prosper. And that's what we see happening. And that's why it was so sad to see them have to just genuflect and bow down. And one of the countries talked about, hey, maybe we can build a golf course, and you're so smart and brilliant, and that'll be helpful, and maybe this will help us. I mean, that's what we're having to deal with, and that's so damn sad.
It is. I mean, like you're saying, Liberia is the first and the oldest modern republic in Africa. It was a founding member of the League of Nations, founding member of the United Nations, supported the war effort of World War II against Germany. Liberia has done a lot of things over the years, but they've always been mineral rich. And to your point, the problem now is there's no built up infrastructure. Yep. So, when you really want to build up a country, you want to build up the infrastructure so that they can maximize possession of their own minerals. Right?
And listen, Joe, when we were there, huge trash problem because you don't have wastewater treatment facilities. Now we were able to visit some places along the coast in amazing resorts and beaches. It was so serene being out there. But then when you go inside, we traveled, and then we were only in Monrovia. And here's the problem. George Weah was the president at the time. Well, his native village because of the roads that were just destroyed during the Civil War, it literally takes a couple of days to travel to where he's from. And it's treacherous, and then when it rains. And so that's why I said in the video, unfortunately, that 15 years, the 15-year Civil War destroyed the infrastructure. The reality is, if that Civil War doesn't happen, Liberia is essentially the most advanced African country. The first five-star, what I was describing there, the first five-star hotel in Africa was right there in Monrovia. And so they are still trying to recover from a civil war that ended more than 20 years ago, and they're having to come to the White House to talk to an idiot begging for help.
Yeah, and that's what's so tough. I mean, during the Civil War, their economy with the pot, it dwindled 90%, right? And so they've got this incredible rich history, but they've had some serious bumps in the road and basically have had to start all over. And now it's kind of like they're groveling, and Trump is sitting there with his arms folded like a Lakers fan in the Clipper game saying, what can you do for me? You know, and so it's going to come to stripping them of minerals, not building them up, not helping them self-determine all the better, not recognizing the long-standing relationship Liberia and the United States have actually had. Liberia was really one of the only non-Western countries and, one of the only African countries that was on the front as it pertains to the League of Nations, as it pertains to the United Nations and these types of things. It would be incredible if a staffer actually put that together and put that in front of him and said, here's the best way to take advantage of what it is that they're trying to do in a mutually beneficial way. But he's not thinking that way because he doesn't understand history. He's not trying to understand history. And that's what's particularly difficult, because for all of these African nations that are often mineral rich, in their case, they've got magnesium, they've got manganese, et cetera. The United States' thing, Trump's thing is, well, let's just strip them blind, not help them self-determine, give them a couple pennies a dollar on it, relatively speaking, and then we'll just go off into the sunset in exchange for something we promised to do, but we really don't do anyway. And so it is sad that way. And hopefully this is something that at least people can be more aware of, understanding this history, understanding how important it is going to be for private investment and other folks to help come in and build up these countries on some level, because the United States is not going to do it with a mutually best interest at heart. It's going to be just, here's what we do. We take the minerals and we go do what we want to do without contributing to infrastructure, without contributing to building. And any country that the United States is honest about building and rebuilding, we didn't skip infrastructure. We involved infrastructure. We didn't skip construction. We helped facilitate it and helped it happen, because this is what pushes democracy forward. This is what promotes democracy and security and prosperity.
Yep.
But as it pertains to these Black African nations, he's not trying to do that.
Absolutely. So folks, do me a favor. If you want to see more, just simply go to our YouTube channel and type in Roland in Liberia. You'll see when I spoke in Monrovia, that was not planned. They asked me just to come up and speak. We covered the whole ceremony. It was Monrovia Day while we were there. There were so many other things that we covered. We actually visited, like I say, several resorts. We visited a housing development that was being built. And so you're going to get a real sense of what it was like for us to be there in Liberia for the 200 bicentennial celebration. That was 3 years ago. That was February 2022. So please do that. All right, folks, going to a quick break. We come back. We're going to talk about, got our next story, talking about rural Georgia. Be real quick, rural Georgia, how they're impacted by the broadband cuts from Donald Trump. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
This week on the other side of change.
The mass incarceration, Trump administration is doubling down on criminalization, and how it is profitable.
And there's something really, really perverse about saying that we need to put people in cages in order for other people to have jobs. Like, that is not how our economy should be built.
Only on the other side of change on the Black Star Network.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, Donald Trump's cuts to rural broadband has been devastating impact on his voters. Folks, Georgia, one of the places he won, they're seeing the results of that. The Digital Equity Capacity Program was a federal grant initiative designed to expand high-speed internet access in rural and low-income communities. They had $22 million allotted to Georgia. Boom, that's now gone. Joining us right now is William Bam Sparks, Chief Marketing Officer of Cultural Wireless. And so tell us, William, how are y'all dealing with that to provide internet? Because, again, this was something that was significant under President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris. There was massive billions being allocated by Congress for rural broadband. And then what's crazy to me, I was talking to one of these idiot MAGA people, and they said, Trump is cutting the program because too much money was allocated. And I was like, are you serious?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Right. That's what. Now, we had Shelley Winter, who's the conservative radio talk show host in Atlanta. He said, yeah, they're changing the program because too much money was allocated, and so Trump isn't getting rid of it. They're cutting the money to make it better. I've never heard that excuse.
No, he literally said, I'm getting rid of it. He said that it was a handout, and it was racist on top of that. You know, he tweeted that on May 8th, and it's been a part of his plan to shut it down ever since. So, you know, right now we're just trying to, you know, get our bearings together and still execute a solution. You know, every state was awarded some funds. I think the total was $2.25 billion. And the state of Georgia, like you mentioned, was supposed to receive $22 million. And, you know, those funds were going towards, you know, access to technology, internet, and, you know, digital skills, which is an issue not just in, you know, Georgia, but it's also an issue in urban communities.
All right. So how are y'all trying to plug that gap? Well, here's a perfect example. He froze. So, I mean, this perfect example. You need, you know, high-speed internet. So, William, I guess your feed proves what the problem is.
Exactly. Just like that. And, you know, one of the issues in Georgia is not necessarily just, you know, access to internet, is, you know, the affordability. And, you know, I don't know if you know a lot of people in the hood, but you know how it goes. People don't have access to laptops, computers, or, you know, during COVID, it was exposed. A lot of people had to go to, you know, libraries to actually study or work their remote jobs or do whatever. So one of the main issues that this program was helping was to lay fiber, to add access to these places because it's so expensive to do it.
So what are y'all doing? Again, you know, the money was cut, so what now? I mean, is Georgia stepping in? Because the people in the areas, they still need the resources to get high-speed, reliable internet.
Yeah, so what's happening now is, you know, companies like mine, Cultural Wireless, we have to step in and continue to execute the plan. So it's not necessarily depending on those federal funds, but now we have to raise. So right now, currently, Cultural Wireless is doing a raise on WeFunder. We're crowdfunding. Actually, shout out to my brother Isaac Hayes III. He was our lead funder on that round. So we're raising $1 million. We have access to some technology that could be creative to help solve that issue, to where we don't have to be so dependent on fiber. We can actually utilize some of this other infrastructure with the major carriers.
Questions from the panel. Rebecca, you first.
Thank you so much for being on the show this evening. So my organization does a lot of work across HBCU campuses, including many in Georgia. Broadband access is still an issue on many of the campuses. Are you all looking to do specific work, maybe at least in Georgia, in supporting HBCUs and upgrading that part of their infrastructure?
Yes, 1,000%. I actually attended Albany State University before I went to Georgia Tech. So I have a deep love for HBCUs. We've already had conversations with Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, and Spelman about helping their infrastructure. We've actually partnered with some other people to bring programs, skilling, access to jobs like call center work, and actually been able to run fiber themselves so we can help the community out, because I believe it's 67% of HBCU students drop out because they don't have access to capital to fund their tuition. So one of our mission and goals as Culture Wireless is to help, bridge that gap.
Joe.
Thank you for all of the work that you're doing. Talk a little bit about the extent to which, you are a Black company that's coming in to fill in the gap. How do you feel about being able to partner with other companies that are doing similar things, Black companies and maybe even otherwise? And tell us about the next frontiers in terms of other things that you're going to be seeking to do. Of course, this is a very, very worthy endeavor. Of course, I think you've alluded to it a little bit in Rebecca's question in terms of connecting with HBCUs. There's some larger issues, I think, to connect with. But talk some about not only more corporate involvement, including other Black companies, and you're partnering with them, and some of the further frontiers in terms of other work you're trying to do.
Yeah, sure. So we've already partnered with another Black-owned company called A2D in Clayton County. So currently we're running fiber in Clayco, covering over, 5,000 homes to help bridge that gap. We also just signed a deal with Fort Eisenhower to help out their issue. We won the Beltline contract maybe like 2 or 3 years ago to expand internet into other communities outside of the Beltline. So yeah, we have no issue with partnering with, major carriers to provide, cell service, devices, also partnering with other infrastructure companies like A2D. So, we all have similar missions. A lot of these guys that we work with are HBCU grads. So we want to make sure that we stay focused in the community and provide access.
All right, so you guys engage in raising fundraisers, so walk us through that.
Yeah, so we kicked off on Juneteenth. We had a magazine launch release. We did a cover with Linus and Parker, and from there we did a celebration. We invited the community out, and so far I think we're at like $12,000. Our goal is to reach $1 million. We've already received $100,000 previously from Andreessen Horowitz, which is the largest VC firm in the country. But this was our opportunity to get the community involved to build, generational wealth within the Black community. So right now we're allowing people to invest 10% of the company of equity will go back to the community. So right now, if you just go to wefunder.com/Culture Wireless, you'll see the link and you have an opportunity to invest.
All right, then. Well, look, good luck with that, William. We appreciate you joining us. And again, people, you're seeing the real effects of the Doge, Donald Trump, Elon Musk cuts, and how it's affecting real people. And he lied when he said he wanted to help people in rural America. And we always say, hashtag, we tried to tell you.
Yep.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Folks, so we're going to end here. First of all, we lost power earlier. There was a tornado warning here in Washington, D.C., Prince George's County. Massive storm came through. That's what knocked us offline, and so that's where we lost our connection and all of that. So we're back online, and so we appreciate everybody for being patient, supporting us. Let me thank Joe and Rebecca as well. We couldn't get Julie on because of technical issues as well. So again, everybody's safe. We're all good. But that's what happens when you got Mother Nature. Storms do those things. And so we appreciate both of y'all being on today's show. Folks, if you want to support the work that we do, please join our Bring the Funk fan club. Your support is critical for us to be able to do the work. And so if you want to use Cash App, please use the Stripe QR code. You'll see it right here on the screen. Click the Cash App button to contribute, to pay to contribute. Also, if you want to send a check or money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Send it to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Stud Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to, of course, get my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Get the audio version that I read on Audible. If you want to get our gear, you can get our gear, rolandmartin.creator-spring.com. Y'all check with Keenan to see if we have the new link up, because we're going to be using a different company, testing them out, because we've had some serious problems with Custom Spring delivering people's orders. If you ordered anything via Custom Spring, send us an email so we can help you get your product. Don't forget, you can listen to our audio podcast, the iHeartRadio Network podcast, so check it out there. And of course, shop our Black-owned businesses at shopblackstarnetwork.com. Yesterday, we featured Leafy, Black-owned toilet paper and tissue company. And so go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. And of course, download the app Fanbase, and be sure to, if you want to invest, get more information by going to startengine.com/fanbase. Folks, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Right now, it's time for Truth Talks. Ho!